My Omega nephew ran off before his wedding, so my family forced me to marry in his place. The night before the wedding, I heard the groom complaining. Who would want to marry some old beta guy who's 8 years older than him? So I signed an agreement with him. When his nephew came back, we would get a divorce. 2 years later, my nephew really did come back. I signed the agreement, took off my wedding ring, packed my bags, and got out of there. But he started searching for me like a madman. Who would want to marry some old beta guy who's 8 years older than him? I raised my hand, about to knock, when I heard that complaint from inside the room. The speaker's voice was filled with disgust and contempt. Then I heard a slightly older man say, "Your fiancé ran off. You have to marry him whether you like it or not." Even though Julian is a beta, he's gentle, refined, and a college professor. His character is every bit as good as an Omega's. Show some respect when you see him in a minute. My father and uncle were right beside me, and they both looked incredibly awkward after hearing that. I just smiled, unfazed, and pushed my glasses up the bridge of my nose. Knock, knock. I knocked and then walked right in. The father and son standing in the room, the Lee family, were slightly taken aback. I greeted them with a warm smile. "Mr. Lee, Joseph, it's been a while." "Ah, Julian, you're here." Everyone exchanged pleasantries as if nothing had happened. Mr. Lee introduced us. "Julian, this is my son, Joseph. I hope you'll get along well." I slowly shifted my gaze to my new husband-to-be. Joseph, the eldest son of the Lee family, 24 years old. I estimated he was about 6 feet 3 inches. He was wearing a pinstripe business suit with a black shirt underneath, the fabric stretching over powerful muscles. His looks were flawless, with sharp, defined features. The sheer alpha pheromones rolling off him were overwhelming. A true S+ alpha. No wonder he looked down on an old beta like me. Ignoring the offensive words I had just overheard, I gave him a warm smile and extended my hand. "It's a pleasure." Joseph seemed stunned for a moment, then pressed his lips together and shook my hand. That was the first time we met. A few days later, Joseph and I registered our marriage and held a grand wedding ceremony. The wedding was originally meant for my nephew, Leo, but he bailed at the last minute, ditching everything to chase his dream. News of the marriage alliance between our two families had already spread throughout the business world. The show had to go on. For the family's reputation, my grandfather and uncle personally stepped in and had me marry Joseph in Leo's place. Simply because I was the only unmarried adult in the family. After the wedding, Joseph pulled out 2 copies of an agreement and told me bluntly, "Let me be straight with you, you're not my type. My dad said if they can find Leo, he'll let me switch. Until then, let's lay down some ground rules. Don't think you can make this real and don't interfere in my personal life." I was perfectly fine with that. No problem. I was thinking the same thing. Marrying him wasn't my choice, so reaching an understanding was for the best. The agreement stated that as soon as Leo returned, I had to divorce Joseph unconditionally. Of course, he would provide me with financial compensation. "Good, you're straightforward." Joseph nodded in satisfaction. He signed his name first and added his fingerprint. "I've signed. You can hold onto the agreement." With that, he turned and left the marital suite without a second glance. 2 years later, I was half asleep when I felt a prickly, tickling sensation on my lips and face. I forced my eyes open. The first thing I saw was Joseph's handsome face, way too close. He was rubbing his stubble against my skin while his hand snaked under my pajamas to grope me. "Get up. I already made breakfast." I impatiently pulled his hand out and rolled over, ready to go back to sleep. Joseph pressed down on me with a wicked grin. "Still not getting up? Do you need a little motivation?" I mumbled. "Leave me alone. I just want to sleep a little longer." I'd been organizing research documents for the past few days, working late into the night every night. Joseph wouldn't let it go. "How many days has it been since you paid any attention to me? You promised you'd go to the races with me today. Get up, or I'm pulling your pants down." I quickly grabbed his hand as it started tugging at my waistband. All right, I'm up. Let go." If he got his way, I wouldn't get anything else done today. Joseph bit my earlobe, the pressure just right. He whispered, "I'll let you off the hook for now, but you have to make it up to me tonight." He half dragged, half carried me to the bathroom. Just like always, Joseph had already filled my cup with mouthwash and squeezed toothpaste onto my brush. "Hurry up. I'm gonna go heat up the pancakes again." He then dashed off to the dining room. As I stood in front of the mirror brushing my teeth, I drifted back, thinking about the past 2 years. When we first got married, Joseph and I couldn't stand the sight of each other. Who would have thought we'd end up being this clingy? It all started about a year and a half ago. At the time, Joseph and I had gone to the next city over for his grandfather's 70th birthday party. Joseph drank that night, which triggered his rut. He ignored my protests and pinned me down. I was a wreck for 2 days and couldn't even get out of bed. When Joseph came to his senses, he wasn't the least bit sorry. In fact, he was practically glowing, saying he never thought being with me would feel so good. I wasn't a kid anymore and we were legally married. Was I really going to make a scene and accuse him of marital rape? I had no choice but to accept it. I told Joseph calmly, this was a one-time accident. Can't happen again. He didn't take me seriously at all and tried to force me again a few days later. I shot back. "Didn't you say I wasn't your type and you didn't want this to become real?" Joseph shamelessly replied, "As long as it feels good, who cares about types? Think of it as just scratching an itch for both of us." He was basically suggesting we become friends with benefits. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As a beta with a low sex drive, I couldn't understand an alpha who thought with his dick. But no matter how much I refused, Joseph was relentless. He wouldn't leave me alone, and eventually he got his way again. My philosophy has always been to go with the flow and avoid trouble. And after sleeping with him a few times, I had to admit it was kind of intoxicating. I wasn't losing anything, and having someone to warm the bed wasn't so bad. So eventually, I gave in and accepted it, moving into the house his family had prepared for us. Once we clicked physically, other parts of our lives started to fall into place. We started spending more and more time together. It took us 6 months after getting married to truly get to know each other. My major is archaeology, and I have a lot of important ancient texts and samples at home, so I never hire housekeepers. I usually just clean on the weekends and grab whatever at the university for meals during the week. My stomach is sensitive from years of irregular eating habits. Joseph started learning how to make soups to help, and he'd cook all sorts of my favorite dishes. I was surprised that a rich kid like him knew how to cook. He said proudly, when I was studying abroad, none of the maids I hired could cook well, so I learned myself. What? Are you impressed? Sometimes, to spice things up, Joseph would take me sailing, skiing, or to see the northern lights, which was really just an excuse to have sex in a different location. Of course, he'd also accommodate my interests. I love visiting museums, watching thrillers, and doing pottery, and he would always join me. Every morning he'd go for a run, come back, make breakfast, and then wake me up. Even though we were just bed buddies, the way we lived was no different from any other married couple. But I never forgot the agreement between us. I constantly reminded myself not to get attached. Losing my body was no big deal, but I couldn't afford to lose my heart. After breakfast, Joseph and I headed to the racetrack. He used to be into motorcycle racing and even had his own team. One time, Joseph crashed and broke his leg. I took time off work to take care of him at home. After a week of tolerance, Joseph was hugging my waist and whining. "Babe, I'm going crazy. I want you." I glared at him. "Want my foot? You stay right there and lie down." He pleaded, "Can't you just get on top?" No. He didn't fully recover for another half a month. After that, he disbanded his team and never touched a racing bike again. Sometimes, when the craving hit, he'd drag me to watch a race. We took our seats in the VIP section. The motorcycles zipped around the track, their roar creating a gust of wind every time they passed. I have zero interest in this kind of extreme sport and kept yawning. Joseph held my hand, his fingers intertwined with mine, completely engrossed in the race. I pulled out my phone with my free hand and started scrolling. Suddenly, I saw a private message from my cousin. "Bro, we found that brat Leo." My eyes widened, and I was suddenly wide awake. I subconsciously glanced at Joseph beside me. He was staring intently at the race on the track. I pulled my hand away. He turned to me and asked, "What's wrong?" "Gotta use the restroom." I stood up and he started to get up too. "I'll go with you." "No need, I know where it is. You keep watching." The race was on its final lap, and the riders were gearing up for the final sprint. Joseph didn't insist and sat back down. I walked quickly to a quiet corner and called my cousin. When he picked up, I cut to the chase. "Where's Leo?" My cousin rattled on. "That little punk wanted to chase some dream of being a singer, got scammed out of everything he had, and ended up singing in some rural bar. My dad's people found him a couple of days ago. His dad and my dad went to get him personally. He's probably coming back today." My heart skipped a beat. "Today?" "Yeah, his family is so embarrassed they didn't tell anyone else. I'm telling you this behind my dad's back." My mind was a mess. I knew Leo would come back eventually, but I never thought it would be so sudden. My cousin was still rambling on. "That kid really screwed you over. You, a guy who never wanted to get married, forced to marry that difficult rich kid from the Lee family. What a mess. Don't let him off easy when he gets back." My ears were ringing, and I couldn't really hear what he was saying anymore. I mumbled a thanks for telling me and hung up. The roar from the racetrack and the stands was deafening. The race was over. My heart sank, inch by inch. Leo's return meant it was time for Joseph and me to honor our agreement. Hadn't I been preparing myself for this all along? Why did I feel so heavy-hearted right now? I walked back in a daze. As I turned a corner, I unexpectedly heard the sound of soft sobbing. I stopped and peeked around the corner. A handsome alpha in a racing suit was standing face to face with a slender beta. The beta's shoulders were shaking as he cried with his head down. I recognized them. The alpha was Kyle, a well-known racer, and his boyfriend was a beta. They had come over to say hi to Joseph and me at a previous race, saying they looked up to us and were determined to overcome the difficulties and make it work. I heard Kyle say with a hint of helplessness, "My family was already against us being together. My dad told you that if you could get pregnant, he'd consider letting me marry you. But it's been 3 years, and there's been no news from your stomach. What can I do?" The beta's voice was hoarse. "You said you loved me for me, that you didn't care about having kids. That was then. Things are different now. It wasn't right to eavesdrop, and as curious as I was, I shouldn't keep listening." I was about to walk away when I saw a delicate Omega run over. The Omega called out, "Honey." He grabbed the Alpha Racer's arm and snapped at the beta. "Why are you still bothering Kyle? Don't you know how to break up gracefully? Do I have to say something nasty?" The beta stared blankly at the Omega. Kyle scratched his face awkwardly, while the Omega proudly declared his status. "I'm Kyle's fiancé. Our parents have already met. Please have some self-respect." A beta who can't lay eggs, actually dreaming of marrying an alpha. Are you trying to make his family line die out? The beta looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He asked Kyle in disbelief, "Kyle, is what he's saying true?" Kyle barely managed an The beta staggered back a few steps, covering his mouth in humiliation as he walked away. Kyle watched him go with a conflicted expression but didn't follow. The Omega hugged his arm, cooing and threatening him not to get back with the beta. Kyle had no choice but to keep reassuring him. After they left, I stood there for a long time. Isn't what I just saw a perfect reflection of my situation with Joseph and Leo? To outsiders, an alpha-beta relationship is just that pathetic. Being a beta means you're dooming someone else's family line. I gave a bitter smile, took off my glasses, and rubbed the bridge of my nose. I took a deep breath, making sure I was calm again. I returned to the VIP seats with a normal expression. Joseph happily told me the team he was rooting for had won. I smiled faintly. "That's great." Joseph put his arm around me. "We still have time later. Want to go to the museum? I think there's a new exhibit this weekend." I shook my head. "No, I'm a bit tired." I really was tired. I used to be able to pull all-nighters without feeling exhausted, but now a few late nights and I can't handle it. I just have no energy. Time waits for no one. I have to admit I'm getting old. "All right then, we'll eat and then head home. How about that boutique restaurant you like?" "Sure, whatever works." That restaurant was small and quiet, and the owner was a beautiful Omega. The owner himself brought our dishes. I noticed his slightly rounded belly and quickly said, "You should be resting, sir. We're regulars, you don't have to wait on us." The owner smiled shyly. "It's fine. This is my third one, I'm used to it. Please enjoy your meal." After he left, I watched his back thoughtfully. Joseph put a piece of boiled fish in my bowl. Seeing that I wasn't eating, he asked, "What's wrong?" I slowly looked at him. Joseph was 26 now, in the prime of his life. He was also the eldest son. There was no way the Lee family didn't want an heir. I asked deliberately, "Omegas are all fertile, aren't they? Getting pregnant is easy for them, right?" Joseph propped his chin on his hand, looking at me and giving me a seductive wink. "What's this? Jealous? I can work extra hard tonight." I laughed. "Don't waste your energy. I'm just a beta. What's wrong with being a beta? If we do it right, you can definitely get pregnant." He added, "But seriously, with how often we do it, if you were an Omega, you'd have had 2 kids in 3 years by now." I raised an eyebrow and said self-deprecatingly, "Too bad I'm not an Omega. It's not that betas absolutely can't get pregnant, but the chances are incredibly low, and the offspring isn't guaranteed to be an alpha. Just like with Kyle and his ex. Miracles don't happen for everyone." He had no idea what was going through my mind and just urged me, "All right, forget about all that. Eat up before it gets cold and fishy." I ate without tasting anything, my mind already made up. Flowers don't bloom forever, and good times don't last. The beautiful dream was over. It was time to wake up. That night, Joseph was insatiable, and I responded with more passion than usual. This is the last time, I thought. Might as well make it a good memory. The next day, Joseph had a golf game with a business partner. He had asked me to go with him, but I made an excuse to stay home. I had already scheduled a moving company the night before. The crew arrived, and in just an hour and a half, they had all my belongings sorted, packed, and carried away. I took the agreement out of the safe. Joseph's signature and that bright red thumbprint washed away any lingering reluctance in my heart. He was so decisive when he signed it back then. So there was no reason for me to hesitate now. I picked up a pen, signed my name with a flourish, and added my thumbprint. I placed one copy of the agreement on Joseph's desk in his study and put my platinum wedding ring on top of the document. I checked the time. Joseph wouldn't be back until the afternoon. I was just leaving without a word. How would he react? Would he be reluctant to let me go? Or would he be angry? I shook my head at my own wishful thinking. The person Joseph originally liked was a soft, cute Omega. The only reason he accepted an old beta man like me was because I was available, an easy conquest. Why should I subject myself to this humiliation? I admit, I once had unrealistic fantasies about Joseph, thinking that maybe he had some real feelings for me beyond just physical desire. But the reality is, not only am I older than him, I'm a beta who has trouble conceiving. Our marriage was forced by circumstances from the very beginning. Now that Leo, the rightful groom, was back, I shouldn't be hogging the spot anymore. I'm not completely over it yet, so for now, I don't want to hear any news about the two of them. I had it all planned out. First, I'd email the university administration and request to take all my accumulated vacation days at once. At 3 in the afternoon, Joseph sent me a text. "Babe, are we eating at home tonight or going out?" The word babe was so jarring. From now on, his babe would be Leo. I replied calmly, "You should eat with your friends, no need to rush back." He texted back, "Why? Won't you be bored at home by yourself?" I didn't reply again. I swapped out my SIM card, used a new number to text my family that I was going on a trip, and told them not to look for me for a while. Then I grabbed my bags and drove off alone. I planned to visit some ancient villages that weren't yet protected heritage sites. It would be good for my academic research and a good way to change my state of mind. I drove all day and found a motel to rest for the night. That evening, my dad called. He immediately asked, "Did you go on a trip without telling Joseph?" I asked back, "What's wrong with Joseph? He's looking for you everywhere, going crazy. What's going on with you two? Did you have a fight?" I rubbed my temples. "Leo's back. Have you heard?" "I think I heard something. But wait, what does that have to do with you and Joseph?" I said seriously, "Tell Joseph that Leo is back, and it's time for us to fulfill our agreement." He'll understand. What agreement? You should call him and talk to him yourself. I said wearily, Dad, I've been driving all day. I'm really tired. I have to go. I hung up and turned off my phone to sleep. The next day, I contacted a junior from my university days. My former classmate Sean is also a beta. Sean now runs his own studio and has a very flexible schedule. When he heard I was going to investigate an ancient village, he immediately offered to join. I met up with Sean in town. He had been very thoughtful and hired a local guide to take us into the village. I thought the guide would be an older local, but surprisingly, he was a handsome young alpha. Hello, Julian. You can just call me Alex. Alex had a bright smile and shook my hand warmly. I responded with a polite smile. Hello? It's a pleasure to meet you. Sean told me, Alex has been a local tour guide here for a while. With him leading the way, we'll save a lot of trouble. Since Sean had already arranged it, I had no objections. The village was not accessible by car, so we had to hike in. Alex led the way, and when we reached a rough patch, he even thoughtfully turned back to help me. Sean teased him, Alex, how come you're only helping Julian and not me? Alex's tan face flushed slightly as he quickly offered Sean his hand. Sean waved it away. I'm just kidding. I'm always out and about, not as refined as my senior. You just take care of him. Arriving at the village felt like stepping into a new world. The place was filled with a sense of tranquility and ancient charm. Many of the buildings were hundreds of years old. The villagers looked at us outsiders with curiosity, and Alex communicated with them in the local dialect. The warm villagers quickly accepted us and even allowed us to enter their homes for a look around. I was busy taking photos and videos. There was no signal in the village, so my phone didn't ring all day. In the afternoon, we returned to town for dinner. I hadn't had a drop of water since morning, but now, seeing a table full of local delicacies, I still had no appetite. Alex asked me, Julian, is the food not to your liking? I said insincerely, no, it's not that. I think I'm just having trouble adjusting to the local environment. My stomach feels a bit off. For the past 2 days, my stomach had been feeling bloated and I'd had acid reflux. I forced myself to drink a bowl of soup and eat a few bites of food. As I was eating, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw the IP address was from his city. Was it my family calling? I hit the answer button. Hello. Where the hell did you go? I couldn't get through to you at all. Joseph's voice, anxious and angry, came through the phone. I quickly took the phone and stepped aside to talk. Oh, the signal is bad. Is something wrong? I should be asking you that. What are you doing? Why did you suddenly go on a trip? If you wanted to travel, you should have told me. I could have taken time off to go with you. Joseph fired off a series of questions. I wondered if he even understood the situation. I told him calmly, Mr. Lee, my nephew Leo, is back. According to our agreement, our marriage is over. I've already had my lawyer start the process. We can get the divorce certificate when I get back. Joseph was silent for a few seconds. Then he exploded in a furious roar. What are you talking about? You want to divorce me? You fucking want to divorce me? You better explain yourself. I winced and held the phone away from my ear, rubbing my ear canal. Why was he reacting like this? It was so bizarre. I waited for him to finish yelling before I continued, Mr. Lee, you were the one who drafted the agreement, and you were the one who signed it first. We agreed to divorce when Leo returned. Don't tell me you've forgotten? On the other end of the line, Joseph started stuttering. I adopted a business-like tone. The compensation Mr. Lee promised. Please take care of that as soon as possible. I have things to do, so I'll hang up now. I ended the call, but Joseph called right back. I answered, annoyed. What now? Joseph's tone had changed completely. Babe, did I do something wrong to make you angry? Why was he still calling me babe? I explained patiently, you didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not angry. I'm just fulfilling our promise. Also, please stop calling me babe. Leo is. As I was speaking, Sean ran over and called out to me, Senior, do you want to go to? He stopped mid-sentence when he realized I was on the phone and quickly shut his mouth. But Joseph heard his voice and exploded with rage again. Who are you with? Who is that guy? It's a junior from my university. I said, then realized I didn't need to explain myself to him. My tone changed. This is my private matter and has nothing to do with you, Mr. Lee. Julian. Joseph hadn't called me by my full name in a long time. His voice sounded like it was about to catch fire. You dare cheat on me. Just you try. I will never forgive you. He's insane. There was no reasoning with him. I hung up decisively and didn't answer when he called back. In the afternoon, we continued on to another village. I had barely eaten anything at lunch, and after walking for a while, I started to feel dizzy, my chest tight and nauseous. I didn't want Sean and the others to worry, so I gritted my teeth and said nothing. The result was that by the time I got back to the hotel, I was completely drained. I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep instantly, dead to the world. I don't know how long I slept, but a thunderous pounding on the door woke me up. I groggily cracked my eyes open. The room was bright. I looked at the phone by my pillow. It was already 10 in the morning. I had overslept. The shock jolted me awake. The pounding on the door continued, accompanied by Sean's anxious calls. Senior, what's wrong? Senior, coming, I replied, getting out of bed and slipping on my slippers. The moment I stood up straight, I suddenly felt lightheaded, and the room started spinning. I quickly grabbed the nightstand for support. Low blood sugar? I wondered. After a moment, the feeling passed. I put on my glasses and opened the door. Sorry, I was about to apologize to Sean when I saw the grim-faced Joseph standing behind him. My heart dropped. What the hell? How did he get here? Joseph's hair was a mess. His eyes were bloodshot, and he hadn't even bothered to shave the stubble on his chin. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I sucked in a breath. Before I could speak, Joseph pushed Sean aside and lunged toward me. He backed me into the room, then slammed the door shut behind him. The lock clicked automatically. Sean yelled from outside the door, Senior, I already explained to your husband, we're just friends. Tell him to calm down. Inside the room, neither of us spoke first. Joseph's gaze was locked on me, like a hunter stalking its prey. I had felt perfectly justified before, but under his intense stare, I started to feel guilty. I tried to compose myself, avoiding his eyes as I walked to the small table to pour some water. What brings Mr. Lee here? Joseph's voice seemed to be squeezed from between his teeth. Come back with me. I took a few sips of warm water and gently set the cup down. I made myself very clear on the phone yesterday. Joseph strode over to me in a single step, grabbed my shoulders and spun me around to face him. That damn agreement doesn't count. That was 2 years ago. I tried to shake his hands off, but he wouldn't let go. I gave a helpless, bitter smile. Mr. Lee, you're a businessman. Please honor the spirit of the contract. To hell with the spirit of the contract, he said domineeringly. Don't even think about leaving me. Since you married me, you will always be my husband. The fact that Joseph came all this way to find me proved that I did mean something to him. But it wasn't enough to change my mind. I remained unmoved. Don't talk about forever. You can dismiss what happened 2 years ago, and you can change again years from now. I won't. I've never had feelings for anyone else. Only you. I will never change. His eyes burned, his expression urgent. I said calmly, Mr. Lee, I'm 34 years old. Not some naive kid. I've seen too many examples. In the end, marriage isn't sustained by feelings, but by conscience. Joseph looked shocked. Are you saying I have no conscience? I'm not. I pushed his hands off my shoulders, my words firm and clear. I'm a beta who has difficulty conceiving. Even if you don't marry Leo now, there will be plenty of omegas to choose from in the future. Your family elders only had you marry me as a stopgap measure. They never intended for me to leave you without an heir. Our marriage was a mistake from the very beginning. Joseph said excitedly, It wasn't a mistake. Don't give me that crap about conceiving and heirs. I only want you. I remembered the scene I saw at the racing club. Didn't that Kyle guy think the same thing at first? In the end, he still lost to reality. My heart was like a stone. People change. Don't make promises you can't keep. Separating now is cutting our losses. It's better to have a short, sharp pain than a long, drawn-out one. It's better to leave each other with some dignity than to tear each other apart in the future. Seeing that I was completely immovable, Joseph clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. So, in other words, you're dead set on leaving me, right? I'm just following the plan you laid out from the beginning. Before I could finish, Joseph suddenly swept me off my feet. My head spun as he hoisted me over his shoulder. What are you doing? Put me down. I stretched my arms out, pushing against his broad back with all my might to resist, but Joseph held me fast with just one hand. Since you won't come quietly, I'll just have to carry you back. He spoke with an air of finality and immediately opened the door. Ignoring Sean's shocked expression, Joseph started walking. Sean was so scared he stuttered, Senior. I cried out to him for help. Sean, help me. Sean had no choice but to run in front of Joseph and block his path. Mr. Lee, please calm down. Let's talk this out. Joseph said with overwhelming dominance, this is my family business. Outsiders should stay out of it. Sean was at a loss. Joseph walked around him and kept going. I struggled so much my glasses fell off. I pounded on Joseph's back, still yelling, put me down. You have no right to force me. Let me go. Just as Joseph was about to head downstairs, a dark figure suddenly flashed by. With a loud thud, the newcomer threw a punch at Joseph. Joseph staggered and instinctively put me down. My feet had just touched the ground, and before I could steady myself, Joseph pulled me behind him. Joseph and the newcomer started trading blows. It was only then that I saw clearly. It was Alex. Joseph, stop fighting. Sean also ran over to stop them, but they were in a frenzy, completely ignoring him. Sean and I were no match for them and couldn't hold them back. Two tall, muscular alphas brawling in the hallway quickly attracted the hotel staff. What's going on? Stop fighting. Stop it. Everyone rushed to pull the two apart. I grabbed Joseph's waist and pulled him back, while Sean helped push Alex away. Joseph pulled me into his arms and asked through gritted teeth, Don't tell me this one is your college buddy too? Across the way, Alex glared at him, panting. I whispered, He's the tour guide. Can you please stop making a scene? Joseph held me tighter in a show of dominance, shooting a warning glance at Alex. Someone asked, Should we call the police? Sean frantically explained, No need, we all know each other. It's just a misunderstanding. Sorry for the trouble. I helped apologize as well. In the end, Sean managed to lead Alex away, and I pulled Joseph back into the room. The whole fiasco, ironically, gave me a temporary reprieve. Joseph's face was covered in bruises and scrapes. I couldn't just ignore it, so I had to borrow a first aid kit from the front desk. He sat on the edge of the bed, and I leaned over, dabbing his wounds with a cotton swab soaked in iodine. Joseph wrapped his arms around my waist and pulled me onto his lap. I was straddling him, and I asked irritably, Can you just be still? He said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Isn't this position perfect? You don't have to bend over and get tired. As Joseph spoke, he leaned in to kiss my neck. I pinched the tip of his ear and pulled him away. Back off. I'm not done with the medicine. He suddenly thrust his hips up. I let out a soft cry, only then realizing the change in his body. I was both angry and amused. What do you think you're doing? You're beautiful even when you're mad at me, he said, reaching up to brush my bangs aside. I swatted his hand away. Don't call me that. I will. Babe, you are my husband, he retorted, calling me it over and over like he was daring me to challenge him. I didn't dare provoke him further, afraid he'd go crazy and try to carry me off again, so I just shut my mouth. After I finished tending to his wounds, Joseph still forced me to sit on his lap. He held me close, burying his face in my chest and nuzzling me. Babe, don't leave me. I really can't live without you. This was his usual tactic. First, he'd be aggressive and intimidate me, then he'd start acting cute and vulnerable. A mix of hard and soft tactics until I backed down and surrendered. That's how he always got the better of me. I couldn't let him win this time. I changed the subject. Have you seen Leo? Joseph looked up, his eyes practically overflowing with resentment. Why are you bringing him up? Why would I want to see him? Leo is a first-class beauty. Maybe you'd like his type, I was about to elaborate when Joseph crushed his lips against mine. He bit and sucked furiously, as if venting his anger, his large hand cupping the back of my head so I couldn't escape. My lips were numb and swollen from his biting, and I was completely out of breath before he finally let me go. His nose was touching mine, his breathing unsteady. Don't you ever say things like that again. You are my only husband, and you will always be my only husband. I don't give a damn if he's beautiful or not. My head was spinning, but I still couldn't stop myself from reminding him. Only an Omega can give you a superior heir. Joseph flipped me onto the bed and pressed his body down on mine. He undid his buttons, revealing a toned, muscular chest. With the bruises still fresh on his face and a wild look in his eyes, he looked down at me, and I completely lost the will to resist. I shook my head, pleading. Don't, he murmured. This mouth of yours always likes to say things that make me angry, so I have to shut it up. MMPH. I didn't get another chance to speak after that. The entire day passed in a daze. The next day, Joseph stubbornly refused to leave, clinging to me like superglue. I had no choice but to take him along on my archaeological trip. I told Sean helplessly, Sean, I'm so sorry. Mr. Lee, he insists on joining. Sean carefully glanced at Joseph standing behind me and quickly forced a smile. It's fine. The more the merrier. A moment later, Alex arrived to meet us. The two alphas were instantly at odds, their tension palpable. Even though I couldn't smell their pheromones, I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The two of them were secretly competing. I whispered in Joseph's ear, "Don't cause trouble, or I'm not taking you with me." Joseph didn't answer. He suddenly leaned in close and pecked me on the lips right in front of the other two. Sean and Alex's eyes went wide. I sprang away from him in embarrassment. Sean tried to diffuse the awkwardness again. Haha, Senior and Mr. Lee are so in love. It makes one envious. Joseph looked as smug as can be. I was so embarrassed I could have died. The place we were going today was even more remote than the village from yesterday. Rumor had it that it was completely deserted. After walking for a while, I started to feel dizzy again, panting for breath. Before Joseph arrived, I had always forced myself to endure the discomfort, brushing it off even when Sean asked. But today, when Joseph noticed my pale face and asked what was wrong, I admitted it immediately. Dizzy and nauseous. Without a word, Joseph helped me to rest in the shade of a tree, gave me water and fanned me. With someone I trusted by my side, I no longer felt the need to be strong. I didn't want to waste any more time, so I said guiltily to Sean, "Sean, I'm sorry. Why don't you two go ahead? I'll rest for a bit and catch up." Sean nodded, and he and Alex set off first. The moment they were gone, Joseph pulled me onto his lap. "You look terrible. If you're not feeling well, we should just go back." I glanced at him. "It's your fault for wearing me out last night." Joseph said shamelessly, "I was starving for 3 days. Of course, I had to eat my fill. Can't you think about anything else? There's nothing else in my brain but you." Joseph took my hand and pressed it against his chest, saying with deep affection, "I love you so much I'm losing my mind, and you still don't believe me." He wasn't embarrassed at all by how cheesy he sounded. I blushed and pulled my hand back. "Give me a break. We're just compatible in bed. Otherwise, why would you even look at an old beta man who's 8 years older than you?" Joseph was not having it. "The compatibility is real, but I've been into you for a long time. That first time was on purpose." My eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What do you mean, on purpose?" Joseph held me and confessed, "I've wanted to sleep with you for ages, but you always avoided me, never coming home at night. I was out of options. Then we went to that birthday banquet for my grandfather, right? My rut hit that night, but actually, I took something to trigger it. I know you're a softie, and I knew you wouldn't just stand by and watch me suffer." Rage boiled inside me. I twisted his ear in anger. "So you've been plotting against me all along. Whose fault is it that you're so damn seductive?" Joseph said shamelessly, "You don't even have pheromones? But you're intoxicating. Slim waist, great ass, and when you smile, you're both pure and sexy. Just hearing your voice gets me going. You're a siren sent to tempt me. You. I didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. Joseph held my waist, pleading softly, "Babe, can we make up?" I admit my mouth was foul before. I shouldn't have been so critical of you. Please don't leave me. I tried my best to stay rational. That's not the issue. An alpha and a beta will never have a happy ending. Joseph cut me off. You're just insecure, that's all. Tell you what, when we get back, I'll transfer all my shares to you. If I ever do anything to wrong you, let me lose everything. I started to waver. Don't joke around, that's your family's business. Isn't what's mine also yours? As he was speaking, I suddenly felt the ground start to shake, followed by a shower of falling rocks. I looked up and saw rocks and dust tumbling down the nearby hillside. It was a landslide. Before I could even react, Joseph had already scooped me up and was running for his life. The mudslide chased us like a roaring beast. The thick dust blinded me. Joseph suddenly dove forward, and my world went dark. Everything was black. Drip, drip. Liquid was dripping onto my face. I kept my eyes closed and instinctively reached up to touch it, my hand coming away wet and sticky. I rubbed my fingertips together. It's blood. I snapped my eyes open. Joseph was above me, his body pinned by rocks and dirt. Yet he was still using all his strength to hold his arms up, creating a small, safe space for me. Blood trickled down his face. He had his eyes squeezed shut in pain, his whole body trembling from exhaustion. He gritted his teeth and trembled out the words, "Get out." I struggled to turn over and crawled out on my stomach. I scrambled out from under the pile of earth and stone and was about to turn back to save Joseph. Suddenly, with a loud boom, the space Joseph had been holding up collapsed. "Liam!" I screamed, my heart tearing apart. I dropped to my knees and started digging with my bare hands. In the distance, I heard Sean and Alex shouting, "Senior! Mr. Lee! Julian!" I cried out, "He's buried underneath. Hurry!" The two of them rushed over and started digging with me. The sharp rocks tore at my fingertips, but I didn't feel a thing. Joseph can't die. He can't die. That was the only thought in my mind. Soon, Joseph's upper body was exposed, but he was completely unresponsive. We worked together to pull him out and lay him flat on the grass nearby. Joseph was unconscious from suffocation. Alex knelt and pressed his ear to Joseph's chest to listen for a heartbeat. His face changed drastically. Oh no, his heart has stopped. My mind went blank with a loud buzz, and I nearly fainted. Sean was sweating bullets, pulling out his phone to call for help, but the signal in the mountains was too weak. He could only hold his phone up, searching desperately for a signal. I collapsed next to Joseph. If something happens to him, I don't want to live either. The thought consumed me. No, I have to hold on. I took a few deep breaths, forcing myself to calm down. I remembered the first aid skills I learned in college. Cardiac arrest meant I had to do CPR. I placed one hand on top of the other, interlocking my fingers, kept my elbow straight, and used my body weight to push down vertically on the lower part of his sternum. Joseph's chest heaved violently with each compression. Next, I opened his airway, cleared the dirt from his mouth and nose, pinched his nose shut, and gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. After 2 rescue breaths, I went back to chest compressions. My arms ached, but I couldn't stop. 3 minutes later, Joseph was revived. He coughed a few times and started breathing on his own. Alex and Sean were overjoyed. He's responding. He's back. The tension that had been holding me together snapped. I suddenly felt dizzy. Thump, I collapsed, completely losing consciousness. When I woke up again, it was 5 hours later. I was lying in a hospital bed with an 4 in my arm. Joseph was sitting beside me, holding my hand. His head was wrapped in bandages. I spoke weakly, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." They did a full checkup. Just a little scrape on my head. Nothing serious. Joseph stroked my forehead tenderly. But he went through all of this because of me. He could have been sitting comfortably in his office. Joseph murmured, "Get some rest. No more running around, you hear me?" So reckless, and while you're pregnant too. I was still in a daze when the word pregnant slammed into my ears. I stared at him, dumbfounded. What baby? Joseph placed his other hand on my lower abdomen, his brow furrowed. Our baby. The doctor checked. You're 5 weeks along. You've been running all over the place with a baby inside you. The doctor said the baby is tough, thank goodness, but you need to be more careful from now on. The whole thing was so surreal I thought he was joking. Are you serious? I'm pregnant? At my age, and as a beta, how could I possibly believe it? We saw the gestational sac on the ultrasound. How could it be fake? Joseph said, full of pride. You think I'm all talk? I wasn't sleeping with you every day for nothing. He was still admiring himself, but I couldn't hear him anymore. I swear, I never even dreamed that I would one day be pregnant with Joseph's child. So my recent lack of appetite, drowsiness, and dizziness were all morning sickness? And here I thought my body was just getting weaker because I was getting older. Joseph kissed the back of my hand and pretended to be fierce. You still dare to run away from me while pregnant? I'd chase you to the ends of the earth to bring you back. My eyes welled up. The image of Joseph lying unconscious was still vivid in my mind. I had almost lost him forever. Now, not only was he safe, but fate had given me this incredible surprise. All this luck had fallen on my head. How could I dare to be ungrateful? With tears in my eyes, I squeezed his hand back. I'm not running anymore. I'm not going anywhere. Even without a child, I would never leave Joseph again. In such a life or death situation, he was willing to sacrifice himself to save me. I would never again doubt his feelings for me. Even if the passion fades in the future and everything becomes routine, I now have enough courage to face it.